It's the Security Weekly News. Welcome to the week of 24 August 2025. I'm Doug White. Welcome to the show. Schools are starting. Schools shall start. Schools have started. Schools will have started. But the future perfect progressive tense is schools will have been starting. And of course, no one's allowed to teach that tense in Florida anymore. You can bet. All right. We got naughty RBG, Docker, RDP, SBOMS, Kullback-Leibler, Oneflip, YouTube, Josh Marpet, and more on the Security Weekly News.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for the Security Weekly News. Ransomware, supply chain attacks, 0 days, cyber threats don't wait, and neither should your defenses. With ThreatLocker, you're not just reacting to threats, you're stopping them before they start. Our Zero Trust endpoint protection locks down your environment with pinpoint control over what's allowed to run and what's not. No guesswork, no blind spots, just proactive, built-for-now security that keeps your business moving. Want to see how a true default deny strategy works? Head over to securityweekly.com/threatlocker and take the first step towards shutting the door on threats before they even knock. Security Weekly and Cyber Risk TV are headed back to one of the biggest identity security events of the year, Octane 2025, put on by Okta. It's live September 24th through the 26th from the vibrant city of Las Vegas. Octane 2025 brings together the best minds in identity, security, and technology innovation. And this year, we're turning up the volume. Security Weekly will be on site in full force with Mandy Logan and Adrian Sanabria leading the charge. Get ready for live-streamed executive interviews, exclusive on-site editorial coverage from SC Media, and brand new this year, a live-streamed episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. It's your chance to engage with identity leaders, dive into the future of AI security, and hang out with your favorite Security Weekly hosts. And here's the best part. Security Weekly listeners get an exclusive discount. Just head to securityweekly.com/octane, register, and use the promo code OKTNSCMA25 to get your conference pass for $200. That's OKTNSCMA25. All right, I'm Doug White, and it's the Security Weekly News. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment, or you will have to repeat the 4th grade. The good news about that is you'll likely be the biggest kid on the playground. The bad news is you're still not going to be the toughest kid on the playground. It's that little kid over there with a beard. Yeah, I knew one of those. I hung around with him a lot because, nobody ever messed with you if you hung around with David. Well, I love Docker. It always scared me a bit, just the whole premise of it. I'm downloading all these things. I don't know what they are, how they work. I'm just downloading them and installing them, but they're handy dandy. It's like a great way to be sitting around so you can spin up a copy of Arch Linux, to keep you company in an airport during a sandstorm. But a critical vulnerability in Docker Desktop for Windows and Mac OS can allow the execution of a malicious container, which can compromise the host, even if you're running enhanced container isolation protection. It's a server-side request forgery with the criticality of 9.3. Now, basically what happens in this thing is the malicious container, which sounds like, a malicious container sounds like an old tuna can that you found under your roommate's bed that was making that smell that you couldn't figure out. But this container can access the Docker engine and launch additional containers without requiring the Docker socket to be mounted, according to a bulletin from Docker. So if that happened, amongst the many, many things that might possibly happen from that, it could create containers that had access to the user files of the host system and probably exfiltrate them. So Felix Boulay found that you could reach the Docker Engine API without any authentication if you just went to HTTP 192.168.65.6 on port 2375 from inside of any running container. I was like, what? What? Once that happens, he built a demo of this that creates a new container, binds it to the C drive using 2 wget post requests, which then grants full access to the entire hard drive, which means you could use the container to do just about anything. There is a proof of concept that's out, and it was patched very recently in desktop version 4.44.3. So if you are running Docker on your desktop, be sure it's current. A lot of people don't set it to automatically update. So you may have an old version of Docker sitting on your desktop that's running in the background, because it's very easy to end up with that without even remembering that you had it, because I've seen that on people's machines before. I'm like, why are you running Docker? And they're like, oh, I don't even know what that is. And you're like, oh, great. So it's a cool bug bounty. I guess I should have been running port scanners inside of Dockers all along, right? I mean, just like, well, I guess, why have I not done that? And I immediately made me want to go do that. So I am going to do it. I just didn't have time this morning. Gray Noise reported that it has seen a significant spike in scanning activity that originated from 1,971 IP addresses that were probing Microsoft Remote Desktop Web Access and RDP web client authorization portals in unison, like, I guess, all at the same time. It's like they hit it real hard, but it wasn't a denial of service. Gray Noise said that this was unusual, sounds unusual, and they said normally they only see 3 to 5 IP addresses a day performing this type of scan, but suddenly there was this very large one. They suspect that this is some kind of a recon looking for timing flaws that could be used to verify usernames prior to a future attack using credentials. I mean, that makes sense, right? I mean, if you wanted to validate that mfufu exists on a system, because you already have maybe a password for that username, and you don't want to start probing and brute forcing because you get detected and blocked, maybe this is a way to do that. Now, most systems no longer give you that kind of information. So if you just type in mfufu, it won't tell you that account doesn't exist. Some do, but most, now just say, if that account exists, we will send you a notice. And, that's become a problem. So they use these timing approaches to try and determine this. So if you push in a username, it may be that the timing is different if the username exists and if it does not. And I'm just speculating because they didn't really elaborate. But Gray Noise said that 1,851 of the IPs involved had the exact same client signature, and 92% of them were already flagged as being malicious. They were predominantly listed as originating from Brazil, and they were mostly targeting IPs in the United States. Now, the timing of the timing attacks, guess what they speculate? Back to school. I agree. Because guess what happens when school's getting ready to start and PS75 fires up the old RDP server that's been sitting there all summer waiting for August and adds a whole bunch of new accounts. And it probably hasn't been patched since May either, when everybody got furloughed or whatever for the summer. Or it could be some other new vulnerability that nobody has found or published yet, so it's not been obvious. But bottom line, schools and everyone else, make sure you're using multi-factor. Restrict access, to only VPN access, and even that should be multi-factor and not trusted. And, good luck with school starting and all those kids show up. I was trying to imagine me going to the first day of school with like lockpick earrings and flipper zeros on my belt and Arch Linux running on an HP calculator. But it just kind of kept coming back to me as a juggalo. I don't know where these things come from. It's very confusing. Now, I think at some point we've all looked for a tool that would do something that could even be questionable, but maybe we were doing it for a totally legit reason, like a pen test or something else. And I'm no fan of script kiddies, and none of us are, but we've all been script kiddies at some point, right? I mean, we've all downloaded something and used the tool. Well, it may be just Nmap, technically you're a script kiddie if you're using Nmap. I used to make my students write, they had to roll their own port scanners in the first assignments in my networking class. But this particular tool is a Go module, and it basically is advertised as a fast SSH brute forcer. So this is something a lot of people would be looking for. And we all, I presume, have sandboxes for experimentation with this stuff. So you want a tool like this, you download it in a sandbox and experiment with it just to see what it does. Well, this one works. This package scans random IPv4 addresses for exposed port 22. So SSH, right? That's the listing daemon. Now, the tool uses a local username/password list, and it reports back if it finds any accounts that are, in the password database or in the username database. Typical. Except there's one catch. This package, when it finds something, so it finds Mr. Fufu and the password of Gandalf, it reports those credentials to you, but it also reports them back to a Russian speaking person named I'll Die Anyway on GitHub. So maybe you're just testing bad passwords. You use this module and poof, any creds that you find that you're getting ready to contact the user about are reported to I'll Die Anyway. So the point of this is, I guess, be careful out there. I mean, this is in the same realm of learntohack.com executable that somebody put on the BBS or my old Star Trek.com game. I mean, only this actually works, right? I mean, I think a modern version of the Star Trek game would ask you to create an account and a password to start and then send that to me while it stalls you trying to lace up Shatner's girdle so I can try that combo on a bunch of banks. I mean, that's the first challenge of my Star Trek game is just, can you get Shatner into the girdle so he can be Kirk? Before that, you can't get anywhere. It's just the first puzzle. But ensure that you take serious precautions when you're downloading these things and do thorough testing of any modules that you and your devs are going to use. Run these in sandboxes, monitor what they do, egress filter them so you know what they're trying to talk to or if they're phoning home. And, don't let them phone home. This tool would be fine if it couldn't contact anybody. I probably still wouldn't use it. But anyway, all of the above. Learn how to lace up a girdle if you want to play my Star Trek game. In the United States, CISA, that's the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, issued a new draft guide for SBOMS that would be the first updates to the software bill of material requirements since 2021. This document was released for public comment on the 22nd of August, and they are trying to adapt SBOM requirements to modern problems by clarifying the list of minimum elements that have to be there. They are also putting in new minimum elements that are mandated and improving the definition for existing elements. So they're really trying to make SBOM be something useful. There's a whole list of changes that they're going to do, and you may want to read it over and maybe you want to comment, right? Because that's what requests for comments are about. And if you don't, then they just come and tell you that, they're going to level your house to make way for a Vogon freeway or something like that. But basically, I love the idea of SBOMs, and then I've had people push back on that and say, oh, there's just a bunch of paperwork garbage. And it is to some degree, but I like the idea. It's like that whole know your food movement where they track a grain of oats from a field in Iowa and how that oat got into the bowl of Captain Crunch that you're eating so that you have some idea where it came from and all the chemicals that are in there as well. I mean, I don't know if Captain Crunch is made of oats. It may be made of earthworms and plastic or something, but hey, it sure is fun to eat, right? Before your teeth all melt. But I mean, what went into that calculator app that you just downloaded onto your secure system and then embedded in your UI for users? I mean, what is in that? I mean, is there an API with an API with an API? And can you say Augustus de Morgan 3 times in front of a mirror and Biggie Smalls appears reading Shakespeare? Could be. So I like the idea. I mean, SBOM's a pain for developers, but it's needed. I think it's trying to force developers into thinking about this stuff as they embed library after library after library. And I think it will continue to evolve, and maybe someday it will actually be somewhat useful or not. I don't know. Palo Alto, Unit 42, scariest sounding thing I've ever heard. Unit 42 found that they could get LLM chatbots to ignore their guardrails. How? Well, did they use elaborate zero-day kernel hacks involving machine code, sentient lockpicks, Tom Cruise hanging from wires, and conveniently human-sized ductwork? Nah. Basically, the report said that if your prompt uses terrible grammar and is one massive run-on sentence, you're there. No Tom Cruise necessary. Now, despite what a lot of people think, LLMs are not smart. And they don't have any real understanding, empathy, or anything else, even though they are programmed to act like they do, right? They're not Mr. Data. I mean, Mr. Data was bi-curious, I think, maybe bi-species curious or something like that. but they don't really understand truth, harm, empathy, AI trolley problems, any of that good stuff. Well, this approach is quite interesting. Basically, these massive run-on sentences take advantage of the way the LLM was designed, and it's about punctuation. Apparently, every time punctuation is encountered in the prompts, it resets some of the safety filter guides in what is called Kullback-Leibler, Kullback-Leibler divergence, or the big KL as we know it. And no, I'm not going to make a Voight-Kampff test joke yet. I might. I probably will. But KL divergence, if you don't know what it is really old. It's from the 1950s, and it was an information theory concept that is also sometimes called relative entropy. And what it's for is it's a way of trying to determine how different one probability distribution is from another probability distribution. And I'm not talking about those real basic distributions. I'm talking about custom distributions that you derived from integral calculus, not uniform and Poisson, although you can use it for that. I mean, you can tell, but a uniform should be a uniform, right? But you can do a KL test on it and see if they match. The classic example I was taught of KL divergence is tossing coins, like everything else. The expected distribution of a coin toss is uniform, 50-50. But what if it comes up 90% heads, which is possible? I mean, that's the whole thing about the likelihood in each throw is still, the same, but you could throw 50 heads in a row. Now, what happens with that is you end up in a debate in a smoky bar while Decoy is playing in the background, listening to Lou talk about just how long is the long run with some econ professor. That you end up with a lot of drinks. But the KL budget in this context refers to constraints that they put on the LLM to prevent it from deviating from the norm by more than a specific amount. So as it starts to deviate, they restrict it. So they're making it move very slowly away from a given position. That's what this KL divergence is all about. So basically, by making really long run-on sentences, the KL budget keeps getting more and more diluted, right? Because the number of observations gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and that means the change gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And this massive deviation where, Chat GPT moves from saying, "Hi, how are you?" to "I kill you now," gets diluted, and those two distributions start to get closer and closer together. Now, I do think I'm going to need a couple of Sazeracs and some Miles Davis and a long dead professor's ghost right about now if you want to continue this conversation. You're in a desert walking along in the sand when all of a sudden you look down and you see a tortoise. Is that KL divergence or a Voight-Kampff test? Good Hacker Jeopardy question. Or maybe a stat Jeopardy question. But anyway, they were able to do this by just writing these really ridiculously long sentences. And because it just kept getting more and more diluted, they were able to then sneak in some stuff that broke the guardrails down. And that KL divergence said, "Nah, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Sure, you can cook meth." Now, speaking of other weird stuff that Lou worked on for fun in his endless spare time, neural nets. We love neural nets. Another thing that is controlled by weights and constraints is a neural net. A neural net tries to emulate the way human brains operate, and there's these little, neurons, and the weight of the neurons start to lean in one direction or the other, which gives you a preference for, I don't know, strawberry ice cream versus rice flavored ice cream. It is a thing, and it's actually pretty good. Now, a weight in AI deep neural networks is often listed as a 32-bit word. And there may be hundreds of billions of bits involved in the reasoning process, which is often difficult to explain because we were trying to explain it to a bunch of old bank board members once. And yeah, that was fun. They were like, "Computers, ha! I can tell if a guy will pay off his loan by looking him in the eye." And you're like, "No, you can't. But your record is really poor." But anyway, a research paper that was presented at the August Usenix Security Symposium described a rowhammer attack, which this is where they flip bits, right? And that rowhammer attack was trying to flip a single bit that would ultimately result in altering a weight in the neural net. Ooh, it's just like, how do you influence people, right? Only this is influencing them with hypnosis. If that happened, it could cause something to completely change in context in the neural net and be pretty bad. Now, this is not a sky is falling paper, but it was very interesting kind of academic treatment of this. if you did this, it might be possible to make decisions come out differently, just like humans when we get influenced by things and become convinced that, vaccines cause whatever. Sorry, I shouldn't go there, but I did. But I mean, if I am taught to always interpret someone who's wearing a powdered wig and a black gown as a college professor, well, that could lead to all kinds of mistakes in real life, right? I mean, if you just happen to encounter a bartender who is wearing a powdered wig and a black gown, you treat them like a college professor with great respect, right? But I mean, basically, the row hammer can flip specific bits, and if they can figure out which bits to start row hammering, well, bad news. This thing, the paper gets into math. Offline, you'd have to figure out the math and figure out how to make a trigger which would activate some specific neuron in the neural net. So this is all very academic. And like I said, it's not a sky is falling kind of paper, but there are a bunch of blog entries for this if you're interested in such things. Changzheng, who wrote the paper, called the attack Oneflip and said there were some assumptions that you have white box access to it, which of course means you actually have the target model, that you could look at. And the process would have to reside on the same physical machine as the target and so on in order for the row hammer to succeed. So it's probably not a practical real world threat, but if you could cause these neurons to flip, I mean, it could create a weird situation where an autonomous vehicle perceives the color red as the speed up symbol or something like that. Because remember, it's not smart. It's just using weights. Just like you were taught that a red sign meant stop, right? A yellow sign meant, I don't know, school crossing. A yield sign means speed up and fight for your life kind of thing. But I mean, it's kind of like that weight in your brain that tells you that 24 shots of Patron at 3 a.m. and then fighting the entire LVPD is a good idea. Yeah, like that. Now, apparently in recent months, this was interesting as well, YouTube has been using AI to tweak videos, and they did not tell anyone that made the video or even ask their permission to do this. Now, Michael Stipe included the phrase, "they airbrushed my face" in the art on the album Monster. And he was always hung up on that picture from one of his high school yearbook photos or something. And I guess his parents or maybe the school had his face airbrushed. And I've heard of that kind of stuff, right? There was a big controversy when my daughter was in school because the photography company was airbrushing the kids to make them look better. Really. And there was this huge outcry, and they had to retake all the photos, and it really went off the deep end. But and sometimes people do want retouches of photos, and they do use AI to make themselves look better or worse or whatever. But it is apparently a growing trend of AI pre-processing, which may affect your face, your hair, your ears, your clothes, your backgrounds, whatever. So Rick Beato, who, if you don't know who he is a very popular YouTube music channel that Rick Beato is a producer, and he does all this music stuff and has guests on and works through songs and has these, top 10 lists and whatever. But he said he noticed that his hair and other artifacts in his videos had changed. And he put up a video with 500,000 views already that described all this. Now, complaints on social media about this seem to have started back in June, but it could be older. YouTube, no comment. So, your Pixel phone can automatically fix bad smiles. Like, I suddenly look better in pictures. Old TV being reformatted. Very slowly, I'm morphing into Ryan Gosling or maybe even Chris Hemsworth. I'm not sure yet. But ChatGPT told me that those were hot guys. I asked ChatGPT, what are the names of some hot guys people would recognize, and that was who it said. I was like, I wonder how it made that decision. But I guess the AI is deciding who's hot and who's not now. I mean, I think this is the beginning of some kind of horrible round of ultimate catfishing where everybody ends up in a sealed room because no one wants to see what anyone really looks like. And if you're not perfect out in public, everybody makes fun of you and your whole persona makes you look perfect and exciting and so forth. And you really can't actually do anything because that would reveal that you actually look like me and you were sitting in an alley smoking instead of dancing the night away at Zero Bond. I mean, this starts to sound like Philip K. Dick or maybe Kurt Vonnegut, right? But kind of different from them too. But maybe I can become the next great paranoid novelist. We need those, right? I'll be Kilgore Trout in the modern age. But speaking of paranoia and living in a bunker with your knees wrapped in tinfoil, because they can get you through your knees, it's underground survivalist Josh Marpet. Hi, Josh.
I am not underground. This is actual sunlight you're seeing. Okay. As for being a prepper, I
thought
have
you just adjusted the warmth of your lights so that, it looks like
Oh, yeah,
you're
you can do the
outside.
color temperature on the lights. Oh, shit. Never mind. Anyways.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No way that's happening.
So I wanted to have an article that was interesting, and I think I found one that I really, really like. It's a mindset article, and it's about compliance, but it really affects security personnel as well, especially in the DevOps world, especially in the architecture world. And the problem is that we've been looking for so long at the data. I mean, look at PCI, and Jeff Mann will tell you PCI is perfect. And he's wrong, but that's okay. And PCI concentrates on the data, specifically card data, customer data, et cetera. And so the card data is there to be protected, and anywhere that the card data is must be protected. That's an interesting approach. That's more of a holistic approach than a lot of standards out there, which just look at the data but are blind to the systems that the data resides on. Okay. But CRA, the Cyber Resilience Act, just to be clear, this is not the Cyber Risk Alliance. It just happens to have an acronym collision here. Okay. Security Weekly is owned by the Cyber Risk Alliance, so I just want to make sure that we're disclaiming this properly. It's not our fault. All right. The Cyber Resilience Act states that anywhere that the data is, you must protect the system that it's on, the system that it came from, the system that it's going to, the every piece, every component, every jot and tittle, and those are actual words, by the way, just to be clear. Every jot and tittle that data goes through, goes on, stores on, whatever, must be security tested, must perform code reviews, must be this whole shift left thing. Everything's got to be secure from the beginning of development. The CRA, and I'm quoting, makes it non-negotiable. So the interesting thing here is if the CRA becomes, let's just call it the law of the land for right now, and you have contracts that mandate CRA compliance, CRA compliance, CRA compliance. That doesn't mean you have to watch Security Weekly News. I mean, you should, but it's not mandatory, okay? What it does mean is that you're going to have to look at every aspect of every system that every piece of the application and the data to feed the application go through. Okay, so what's the big deal? Well, when GDPR moved to be extra jurisdictional, and GDPR being extra jurisdictional means that when they, if you had a European citizen in your data bank, even if you're in Kansas, if you have a European citizen as a customer, you have to treat their data as European under GDPR regulations, not just Kansas data breach regulation or whatever that is. I have no idea. I just picked Kansas randomly. So that was extra jurisdictional. And okay, we've sort of come to agree with that, and that's become sort of the law that everybody goes by, right? What CRA says is not only do you have to treat the data properly in terms of GDPR style stuff, but hey, what about backups, logs, temp files? What about the system that the data gets stored on? Not just the data that the system the data gets processed on, but stored on. It expands the definition of where you must secure and how strongly you must secure rapidly and broadly. Okay, what does that mean for me? It means that you have to pen test everything, and I mean everything. You have to manage your data, and I mean all of your data, everywhere, and you have to do it properly. Is that going to be a problem for everybody? No. If you've already done all of your foundational work and all of the work to manage and monitor and protect your data, you're fine. And what percentage of companies are there? I'm going to say it's probably less than this percentage. For those that aren't listening, I'm just holding up all my fingers. So less than 10% of companies probably actually manage and maintain and protect their data and systems properly. So, okay, what's that going to do to all of the other companies? Nothing, unless and until they get told you have to, in which case they're going to have to re-architect damn near everything they do, check all of the third-party risk, redo all of the third-party risk management assessments and vendor risk assessments, rebuild your DevOps systems, it's going to be unpleasant. Let's just leave it at that. So if you really want to get things done properly, you need to call Doug and ask him to do it with you and for you. Okay? He does some consulting. He will laugh at you, but that's okay. It's part of the way through to health. All right? So if you want to get your company and your data healthy and secure and proper, you call Doug. Dr. Doug will come in and help you with that, laugh at you a little bit while he's doing it. But, that's just the price of doing business these days. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you, Josh. That's what you want from a consultant, right? You want the person who says the emperor has no clothes. That's what consultants are for. They've got no political investment in the organization. So you need those people. For years, I served on a bank board, and my job was literally just to sit there and say, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. And, and all these people going, oh, there you son, you're rude, and you're not wearing a necktie. And I was like, yeah, the necktie would really help. Yeah, I'm sure if we made everyone wear a necktie, all of our problems would be solved. But you be you. Thank you, Josh. Speaking of all that, our government and our courts, which are part of our government, typically have trouble keeping up. Imagine that. I once had an 80-year-old judge toss me out of their courtroom because I was using a laptop to take notes. He literally was like, you out. And I was like, I'm sorry, I'm just taking notes. And he was like, out. Don't allow any of that stuff in here. No phones, no computers, no nothing. Like, okay. I had a judge once in an email case who did not use computers, did not use email, did not use cell phones, and hand wrote their court orders in longhand copper plate, probably with a quill. Speaking of people wearing powdered wigs, but literally, I got this court order that was written in longhand. I was like, is this some kind of fraud or something? I had to call the court and go, is this real? And she was like, oh, you have judge, fill in name of judge here. But yeah, I was like, yeah, that's who the judge is, I think. And she's like, yeah, he doesn't. Yeah. I'm like, but it's an email case. And he was like, yeah, it's going to be fun. Well, this story was about a U.S. senator calling out the federal judiciary of the United States for negligence and incompetence, his words, after a recent attack on the judiciary by attackers which were tied to the Russian government. And these attacks exposed confidential court documents. You really don't want that, right? That's bad. Now, the breach was reported in Politico 3 weeks ago, and they said that the vulnerabilities used in the attack had been known by the judiciary, the federal courts, since 2020 when they were attacked in the same way, and they'd still not fixed it. These filing systems were called CM/ECF and PACER, and they're federal case management systems that allow people to file materials that are related to a case electronically. So maybe old Judge Copperplate was onto something, right? Hand wrote it all. It's on paper. Nobody's going to get that. And that would be true, right? I couldn't even read the copperplate. I had to sit there very slowly with a magnifying glass and try to figure out what it even said. But the senator said that the blame for all the breaches were on the judiciary's refusal to acknowledge security failings and resistance to meaningful change. Imagine that. Now, I don't know about you and what you've done or where you work, but I have done consulting with all of these things. Medical doctors, professors, judges, especially federal judges. All these people are difficult. And federal judges are like the final boss, right? If you're in that, consulting for change movement, they're the final boss. But tell a surgeon they have to log in sometime and use a password, watch what happens. Professors, the worst. But judges, not only can they refuse, they can toss you in jail, fine you, or make you sing the Teapot song in front of the whole court while dressed in a naughty Ruth Bader Ginsburg costume from Spirit Halloween, opening soon near you. So, I agree with the senator. But change is going to be difficult with the court system. Change in federal court, oh, baby, that's going to be a challenge. Of course, Congress, say a senator could pass a law or something requiring them to do better. But we wouldn't want that. That is the news. Thank you, Josh. And we will see you next time on the Security Weekly News.